Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Around the Campfire. Thank you for joining us for our latest episode focused on the unique challenges higher ed marketers face. Today, I have three distinguished guests joining me. Alex Boston, one of our digital strategists, Dana Grenier, our account director lead, and Caitlin Gerke, our UX research lead. All three have worked in higher ed in the past in either a marketing or teaching capacity or even both. And if you've watched our podcast before, you know we usually start with some trivia or unique personal fact or insight about our guests or guests. So since there are three of you joining me today, I'm going to keep this pretty brief and ask you all a really easy question. So here goes. What is your favorite thing to do or your favorite hobby outside of work? And I will start with Alex.
I probably spend most of my time on music. So I do a lot of stuff with I play ukulele. I also do drums, kind of recording and messing around with music, and then also well, with my wife also sings as well. So we kind of do musical stuff together a lot.
That's very cool. See,
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
I didn't know that. So that's really cool. Dana, how about you?
Spending time with my family, and then when it's just me all by myself, anything to do with literature, reading, Downton Abbey, anything period drama based on a true story kind of thing is totally up my alley. So, and when the weather's nice enough, being outside.
Awesome. Love it. Love it. Caitlin?
I'd probably say games. So either
Mm,
board games. So we've got a nice board game collection that we like to play between myself and my husband and some of our friends. And also kind of like Dungeons and Dragons and that kind of stuff we play pretty
ooh,
regularly as well.
Mhm.
So
that's fun. Awesome.
yeah.
See, I love this. I get to know stuff about you guys that I didn't know before. Just sitting around the campfire. All right. Well, thank you guys for answering that question up front. I think it's always really nice to get to know people personally for not just myself for selfish reasons, but for our audience as well. So so thank you for that. So let's go ahead and I start this kind of set the stage about the current state of higher ed and why effective development and execution of digital strategies is so critical for colleges and universities in these days in order to thrive in this increasingly complex environment. So I'll kick this off to Dana to start. You've worked with many and do work with many higher ed clients currently. What are some of the challenges that you've seen higher ed marketers and institutions grapple with?
Well, I think right now the hot topic really is just the population itself. So if we go back 17, 18 years, there weren't a lot of children born. There was a recession that was in place, and so people just made different choices, and that resulted in a smaller population of who would be coming of age and needing to go to college around this time. And so colleges are in the situation where they're really trying to figure out how do we sustain financially all the services and opportunities we can provide to classes that were larger in the past with smaller amount of population to recruit. So those coming straight out of high school, that's the group that's really hit with this. There's less of those students, and so more colleges are going to be competing to try to get them and attract them to their campuses. But those young people also know that perhaps their parents or people that they know or close to, they've heard this, student loan payoff, or, oh, we took too much student loan, and hear their parents or friends grumbling about it. And they don't want to find themselves in those same situations. So they're being smart and being more strategic about how they're going to select what they're going to do in the future. And now more than ever, I'm hearing, oh, I'm going to take a gap year and try to figure things out. Or I'm trying to maximize all I can possibly do in high school to get as much college credit as possible. So the cost for me when I do go on are going to be less or minimal. And they're also up against, do I just not go to a 4-year type of institution and do more of a trade or an apprenticeship, because there's shortages there as well, because nobody was encouraged to really go into those in the past. And so now we have a shortage in more of those, My dad told me when I was young, you should be a plumber. And I was like, I'm never going to be a plumber. And now every day I'm like, I should have been a plumber. Like there's so much I could do around my house if I hadn't had that knowledge base. And we need people with those skills to help those of us who don't have that inclination or knowledge. And so all of these things kind of mix together. And then at the higher ed standpoint, it's how do you attract those individuals? How do you also fill the void, the less traditional student, that high school student? So how do you attract an adult learner? How do you attract somebody who maybe needs to get a new skill set because they're switching careers or they need a certification to move up in the role that they do have? And how do you make yourself attractive enough that they will pick you? All this in the barrage of information that we all get, right? All it takes is one click on one website, and now you're getting ads and information from places you have never even heard of before. And because, Caitlin's nodding her head, and I bet this has happened to Alex too. In my own personal Instagram feed, because I work with higher ed clients and I'm going to their websites and checking things, I'm constantly getting information, which ends up being great for the people that I'm trying to help and work with, but something I personally am just not in the space to enroll in an institution right now. So there's just a lot going on, and it's the colleges and universities need to be aware that they have to kind of mix things up a little bit. What they've done in the past isn't necessarily going to resonate for the next, 5, 6, 10 years because of this population shift that occurred.
That is a great kind of intro and setting the stage for all of the complexity that marketers have to deal with in this space. And I guess just given the sheer number of things that they have to manage and challenges, it really speaks to the need for a very strong digital strategy that will guide their marketing efforts. So let's talk a little bit about that and why starting with strategy is so critical. So Caitlin, I think I'll turn it over to you to talk about that, and also how UX strategy and research in particular can benefit higher ed institutions.
Yeah, for sure. I think, in one way, UX strategy benefits everyone, but especially higher ed, considering a lot of the issues that Dana just brought up. So to make sure everyone kind of is on the same page, when we talk about UX research, UX strategy, we're talking about basically gathering data from users from a website in order to inform decisions about what you do with your website, what you do with your marketing, how you make a good user experience for the people who are coming to your website to interact with you, to learn more, and maybe even to apply. And the reason why, especially for higher ed, and especially with some of the issues that Dana just brought up, why UX strategy is so important is that it allows you to get current data about what your users are facing so you can make decisions based on that. So if we talk about the users in particular, those traditional students, their needs are changing all the time. The younger generation, what the traditional students coming out of high school needed from their college today is so different than what they needed 5 years ago. And even how they're interacting with the schools is different, as typically that younger generation are the first early adopters of every social media platform out there, the different changes in technology they're typically adopting. So if you want to reach them, you have to know what technology they're using, how they want to be reached, but also what messages are going to resonate. A lot of those issues that Dana just brought up of, hearing all these concerns from their older siblings or their parents about costs and things like that, 5-10 years ago, that wasn't really the main concern. There were other concerns that those students had. So the more research you can do and more data that you can base those decisions on are going to make sure that you aren't wasting your time, that you're making the messaging that best resonates to that audience you're trying to reach, and that you're reaching them in the way that's the most applicable to them, that you're using the platforms that are useful to them, that you're, interacting with them in the way that they want to be interacted with so that you'll be the most likely to be successful. Same thing with the non-traditional audience. They're obviously going to have very different needs than a traditional student. So the more data you can gather and the more research you can gather on what their needs are, whether that's, typically see things like flexibility, making sure they can still manage their everyday life along with school, making sure you can understand that messaging. And then in addition, having the data to know how things are working. So, the big thing that I think I fight with on the strategy side is that we never want to make assumptions. We always want to have some sort of information or data that is backing up every decision we're making, as well as monitoring the success. So the more often that you're able to go in there, get data, and use that data to make recommendations for how you want to change your website, how you want to change your approach, how you want to change your messaging, the more likely it is that you're not just making assumptions and you're staying with the times of changing technology and changing user need to best make sure that you are using your resources widely. Because especially now in the higher ed space, maintaining your resources and not wasting time, not wasting money is even more important than ever. So the more we can know that you're making the right choices based on that actual data, the better off you're going to be in the long run.
I'm going to
All
chime
right.
in too here.
Yeah,
Having
go
that
ahead, Dana.
data in hand also is going to help you with the political climate at the college or
yeah.
university, because it's just known that there's some people who are going to have a louder voice, who have a little bit more weight, who are going to be able to persuade where those decisions go. It's harder to persuade away from data if you have the facts right in front of you. And so doesn't mean every college is going to make the decision solely based on data, but we have seen it influence decisions firsthand, because it's not, as Caitlin has alluded to, just this emotional of, I think it should be this way. And so that keeps the best interest of the university at the front versus the best interest of one or a group of individuals who think they have it all under control. Because it, as Caitlin has said, it changes constantly. Very short attention spans cause us to have to constantly switch what we're doing.
And I'll even build on that too, because I think that's a great point of, I think sometimes there tends to be, especially with universities, this idea of, well, this is what we've always done in the past, and this is what's worked in the past. So being able to have actual data that, again, maybe that's an emotional connection of, maybe that was someone's pet project or something, but you can show the data that says, that was useful in the past, but it's not working anymore. So we need to shift our focus to make sure that we continue to be successful. And here's the actual numbers that show why we need to do so. So yeah, it just can be really powerful.
I love the idea of having data in hand. I think that's an excellent piece of advice. So, and that kind of leads into the next question that I have, and this one is really related to for Alex. But part of developing a strong strategic website strategy really involves a very particular focus on developing content smartly and making sure that you're optimizing for SEO. So what are some of the biggest opportunities that higher ed institutions have when it comes to creating that type of high quality content that can reach and attract students?
Yeah, I think the big opportunity in front of universities is that each one of your degree programs that you have is, whether it's an area of leadership, something that you're just offering, a credential that you offer, each one of those is potentially powerful from a search standpoint. That there's sort of a level of value and market interest in each of those individual programs. And so optimizing your program level content to make it so that you start ranking for those credentials and those degrees when people go in and start searching for, bachelor's of or master's of business administration online or something like that, that you start showing up for those. So getting those programmatic things really dialed in is a really big opportunity from a search perspective. But from a broader content perspective, just making it so that your experience is so scannable and easy to use for students, and that you're delivering only the information that they need at the point in the funnel where they need it, I think is really going to be the defining element wherever they find you, whether that's on search or through paid advertising. I think is a really interesting channel for schools right now, especially for more competitive credentials, things that maybe you're not going to have as easy a time ranking for, or there may be like a for-profit institution that just has tons of marketing budget to throw at digital advertising and search engine marketing in general. The way to do it is to really look for one of those long tail programs that we can start promoting digitally, either in digital ads or in SEO, and just optimizing those pages and being found for those in whatever way you possibly can. So the cool thing about schools is you're not just optimizing for your brand or for your institution or the type of broad school you are, you're optimizing for all of these different programs that you offer as well. And so you have a wide net that you can cast out digitally to catch a big, broad audience. So really thinking in terms of where's the programmatic opportunities, where are the things that we should really lean into as a school You can look at the iPads database to at least get a few years back. It's obviously a few years in arrears, the data where show you how many people graduated from with particular credentials. You can use that at least as a sort of retroactive market gauge and just see where is there growing interest in terms of credentials and where could we maybe throw some SEO effort to really amp up our attention to this institution in particular. Where's that growth happening and what programs should we really throw our weight into? It can be a little bit politically dicey to do this. Some departments aren't going to like it, that you're kind of pushing priority towards where there's interest and where there's, proven. But it is really the way that if you lean into your strengths and put digital effort behind that as well, it's really the area where I've seen a lot of schools grow. They really focus on the areas that they're good at and just lean into that strength.
I think
Yeah, the
too. Oh, do you want to go first, Caitlin? It's okay.
I'll just do a quick jump in because I think it ties in with kind of that overall experience is from the user experience perspective on the website. The other thing is once you get them there, make sure you know what you want them to do next. So I think one thing that I often will recommend to schools is think about, especially when we talk about those program pages, if we do all this effort to get someone from a marketing perspective to that page, we run ads, we optimize for SEO, let's make sure that it's really, really clear how to apply. Because I think sometimes that step gets forgotten in the kind of that rush of, let's really make sure people get to this page. But then what do I want them to do once they get here? So let's make sure they know how to apply. Let's make sure that they know how to reach out if they have questions, make sure that there's easily accessible resources. And really every time you're looking at updating the content on a page of your site, kind of always be thinking, okay, once someone has learned this information, what do I want them to do next? And make sure that that next step is really clear, whatever page they're on. All right, Dana, I'll let you share your thoughts
No,
now.
it's fine. To latch on to what Alex was saying, it's also a good time when you're looking at these optimizations to let go of a little bit of that vernacular that might be unique to your institution. You might believe that everyone is searching by this unique name for this program or academic degree that you're offering, but in reality, they're using maybe some common terminology that all your other competitors are using, but you're trying to stand out. So you've come up with some sort of unique name. Embrace that uniqueness. You don't have to maybe apply it to your program, but use it in your content, use it in a way so that it can be captured. And like Alex said, show up in those results. So fight that urge, because your uniqueness sometimes isn't helpful because people don't know how to search for you because they don't know that term that you're using.
Yeah, great point. That was a great discussion on SEO and content. Thank you guys for that. I guess now let's turn to the hot topic of social media, which is always such a big kind of piece of the marketing puzzle for higher ed as a channel and tactic to reach prospective students, but also I would imagine key audiences such as alumni as well. So what are some of the things that higher ed marketers should consider when it comes to social media or any social media strategies you've seen that other institutions might want to consider? And I'll kick it off to Alex to start.
Yeah, so at the University of Iowa, which is where I spent most of my time in higher ed, I worked a lot with the social media team there, although I can't take credit. They were an incredible team. They really knew their stuff when it came to which channels to use and how. I think we had the most engaged with social media platform in any university in the country for a while. Not sure if that's still the case, but it was while we were there. And the real reason that they were so successful was a combination of factors. The first was they really understood what the various channels were for and who they were going to be reaching on each one. And they built a distinct strategy for each individual channel. The other component was authenticity. They really did a good job of trying to remove the sort of institutional speak that often comes through when a big brand is trying to communicate on social, and tried as much as possible to put the camera on the student body and to show off them and their achievements and to kind of let the school speak for itself a little bit more. They certainly created that were a bit more curated, but when they did, they would have the contributors speak to that and announce that they were working with the university so that it was transparent and that it didn't feel staged. It was we are aware that this is staged. We created this event with that. They got to go to this football game, for example, because we supplied the tickets kind of thing, so that those promotions felt more authentic and that we were being transparent with people. But definitely the knowledge about the channels and who they were reaching. They had a phenomenal Facebook strategy that was just focused on parents and alumni, because that was the main group that was being reached through there. And they made content that aligned with the sort of more nostalgic, more calling back to your time on campus than it was about getting people interested in coming to the university. It might have had that effect on a couple people, but Facebook is just not where the younger audiences are. So it's more for, the parental audiences, and they reached out through that and got parents engaged too and got them interested through that content. Whereas if we were doing something on Snapchat or TikTok, that was more focused on a younger audience. I think they were just exploring TikTok when I was there. I don't know if they've really waded into it more than that, but just generally the channel strategy is so important, and having a clear map of what sort of content you're going to produce to line up with that channel and those audiences, I think is really the biggest, sometimes the most difficult thing for schools to think through, especially those who aren't familiar with those channels. It can take higher ed a little while to catch up to how things are working, and that's fine. They're focused on a different mission than staying right on top of who's in social media and what are the various channels that people are using right now. But it's definitely important to spend some time learning those new channels, making sure that we're hitting the right content with the right audiences and that we're aligning with what those offer. So I think it's just knowing your channels and creating content that fits each one.
Absolutely.
I would say too, I think sometimes universities that maybe only have one individual or maybe two that can help with social media, they're always looking to multi-purpose the same content in different channels. And to Alex's point, it's not always applicable. It needs a different angle. It needs different language around it, maybe a different production value even. And so be cautious of those opportunities, because it isn't necessarily a one size fits all. I would also say too, while it's important to know all the different channels, don't necessarily join and start producing on a new channel right away. I would recommend, reserve your handle to make sure nobody else can get it, but then watch, see what happens. Is it worth going there? Is that where your audience is that you're trying to reach, as Alex has said? And then the final thing I would say is, don't worry about going viral. Please don't. If you happen to, great for you, but I think any viral piece is never intended to be viral. It's just something that happens where it's this kismet of things all colliding at once and it gets picked up on. So if you're hesitant to produce content because you don't think it's going to get popular enough, you just have to try and just do your best and learn from things as you go. But I've seen some channels get shut down at universities because, it's not getting popular enough. It's like, well, let's think through all the different things you're trying to achieve, and is this the right place to do it? And are you letting people know that you're here versus just assuming they're going to find you? So there's parts of that as well.
Yeah, the last thing I'd add on is just that, especially when you're targeting those traditional students, they know if you're not being authentic. They know if you're just there to be there and to market to them. So I think I see this the most on TikTok, especially now, where I feel like some people are just there to be on TikTok and they aren't really embracing what TikTok is trying to be and behaving the way that others would behave on the platform, and kind of trying to reach out in a more authentic way. So I would say if you're going to invest time in a platform, make sure that you know how, just like Dana was saying, make sure you know kind of what the ways to do it in a way that is, people want to watch and people know if they're being marketed to. So make sure that you're saying things that are actually they want to follow, giving them information that's helpful or fun stories, or telling, doing things in a way that's interesting and not purely trying to market, because people know.
That's a very, very good point. Very good point. That is, you guys have given everyone a ton of great information about how to approach their strategy, how to approach kind of looking at channels and delivery of content. But no matter what channel or strategy you're focused on, kind of the end piece of all of this, or ongoing piece of all of this, is measuring results. And you have all kind of spoken to that a little bit. But we often see our higher ed clients struggle with measurement, particularly when it comes to measuring or analyzing the effectiveness of their website, or multiple sites that they have. So I'll kick this one over to you, Caitlin, to start, and then Alex and Dana jump in. But what are a few key things that marketers should keep in mind about measurement and how they can, to piggyback on that, present results to leaders and others in the organization in a way that makes sense and is easy to understand?
Yeah. So I think, we touched on measurement a little bit earlier, but it's just so important. So anytime you're getting started with any sort of website project or marketing goal, I think always keeping measurement in mind, keeping in mind kind of what your goal is for that objective. So like I was saying with websites earlier, thinking of, is it driving people to this click enroll or click apply? Is it getting people to click onto this page? Thinking of what that end goal is of the thing that you're measuring and making sure that from the get-go, you have that set up to be tracked in whatever way you need to be. For your website, it might be something as simple as making sure Google Analytics is running on your site, possibly spending some time with Google Tag Manager and learning about that tool, which can do a little bit more intense tracking. There's also a great tool out there called Google Looker Studio that we use quite a lot. It's a free tool. It allows you to make little dashboards to track things, which can be incredibly helpful. But regardless of how you're tracking it, making sure that you know what it is you're tracking, and if possible, getting through that before and after data. So having data of this is how we were doing, we did this thing, and this is the end result. And we were trying to see this increase, and we either saw it increase or didn't increase, and we can go from there. So making sure it's trackable, making sure if you are setting goals that they're realistic, kind of like we were saying before about the going viral comment. You're not probably going to go viral. If you do, it's very exciting, but it shouldn't be the goal to go viral. It should be the goal to improve engagement or something like that. Making sure that you have a realistic mindset of what you can achieve with that campaign. And the last kind of big thing I would say is going back to that leadership comment. Understand what it is that's actually important to your leadership so that you know how to track that and to show that improvement to them. So I think the biggest one that we hear about the most is enrollment right now, especially. There's a big focus on enrollment from leadership perspective. They want to see a change in enrollment. So thinking about how you can track that and how you can optimize things to help that goal and tying it back to what they want to see is, I think, a great way to show that to them. It's also a nice way to be able to simplify it because often leadership aren't going to have as strong of a background in some of these terms that we're used to knowing the nuance of. So if you can do something like, say, something as simple as, we optimized the user experience on the program pages of the website, and we got this many more people to the website, and this many of them clicked apply. That's a pretty telling thing that anyone can understand that says more people came to the website, more people click apply, and it's probably because of these things that we did. That's a really great way to just really simply say, hey, these are the things you care about. This is what we're tracking to align with what you care about. And these are the things that we're doing to help improve that thing moving forward. So I think, just kind of keeping that in mind, keeping in mind how you want to track that and what are those simple things that you can track to show that growth, I think is a great way to just make sure that you're able to see the good things that you're doing and track it going forward and have that data of what works and what doesn't.
Yeah, I think kind of building on that, if you're into a little bit of a challenge, because it can be very difficult, but if you are up for maybe getting into something that is a little bit more sophisticated in terms of measurement, you could go try and form a relationship with, especially in large universities, this can be really tricky, but try and form a relationship with your admissions team if you're working within a marketing office, and seeing as much as possible how much of a direct through line you can create from your campaign efforts or your digital marketing efforts in general, straight to matriculated students. The ideal is obviously in a dream world, we would be able to point to cost per student at the end of the day and say we spent this much, and we got this amount of students. And so does that equal how much revenue the university brings in from tuition, et cetera, thinking very more private sector-y about it. But that's not always possible given the way that universities work and the various silos and systems that everybody's using. It may not all be that cohesive. But at the very least, if you can get in with your admissions team and help create some sort of tracking mechanism, which can be done through tagging mechanisms in GA or GTM, to try and create a data through line that allows you to get all the way through matriculated students, and just to kind of feed that data back in so that you can track those recruitment goals more precisely. And it's not just how people interact with your site and then do they go to the apply, and then it's no longer our question anymore. Once they hit the apply page, we stop and lose track of them. That's really what we want to try and avoid. You really want to follow that through line all the way through to them deciding to become a student.
I think too, with all the data that Caitlin and Alex have been speaking of, it can also help identify non-digital places that could maybe use improvements or tweaks, right? And so let's say we can't track beyond the apply button. We know they clicked it, but we don't know if they completed. That can happen sometimes because of the different tools for applications. There's only so much maybe we can get connected because of the various parties involved. But that could help you identify, oh, 100 people clicked on the apply button, but we only got 20 applications. Why would they stop? Is our application complicated? Is it asking to turn in documentation that maybe somebody doesn't readily have? Like, why are they maybe abandoning that? If they do get all the way through, then is the teams on the other side, the admissions team or the registration team, et cetera, all doing what they need to do to ensure that that person is now enrolled and taking classes in the term that they anticipated? And so I do think all the digital aspect of it is critical, but there's also this other piece that we can't forget. I think it's really easy to say, oh, marketing didn't work, but there's a lot of components in the recruitment of students to higher ed facilities. And we need to, treat all of them with respect because they all have a handle in how that individual is going to feel when they're a part of that campus, whether that's virtually through online programming or in person, as we used to say, the butt in the seat in the class. And the leadership, kind of piggybacking off of what Caitlin said too, leadership always thinks about how many are actually here, how many are actually in the seats, in the chairs, behind the keyboards. That's the metric they're always going to look at. But these other key places can be reported to say, well, we know this part worked well, but here's the part we could maybe spend some time, money, energy on. Or, wow, look at this. We've really got a seamless process. Things are working really well. Bravo to us, and give yourselves pats on the back where you can, because it's hard and it's ever changing, and you always have to be willing to let go of something in order to find the next thing.
Awesome. Thank you all for that. So now I have my to-do list with lots of different tactics, strategies, ideas, and I'm excited, and I'm going to go off and I'm going to try to do some of these things as a higher ed marketer. So I guess kind of bringing all of this together from your perspectives and with your expertise of all the things that we've talked about, or even things we haven't talked about yet, what would you say the top 3 things in your opinion that higher ed marketers could do right now to improve their websites or digital initiatives? And knowing that every institution is different, they may have different goals and different focuses, but generally, what are kind of the top 2 or 3 things in your opinion that you really feel strongly schools should be focused on from a digital perspective right now?
I'll start. My number one thing is don't oversaturate your message to your audience. And this really comes through on the social media, probably more than other aspects of it. But these young people, and I can speak to it because I have a high schooler right now, they catch on fast and they get irritated if they didn't look to get information from you more than once, and now you're showing up everywhere they go, and that turns them off. So if you're doing retargeting, remarketing, that kind of thing, keep that in mind, that they have their personal space or however they define it. And you won't know if you broke that bubble. But I can tell you, if you're on them every single day, multiple times a day, you have broken the bubble already. So that would be the one thing I would really encourage. The other thing then is to, as I said before, let go of that institutional language that's unique to you. Keep it for inside. People will learn it when they become a part of your community. But when you're trying to reach out and bring in people who may not even know you exist, share some terms that might be easier for them to understand or might be more common that they'll search by, so that you can pop up in those searches when they're looking for the program or what they want to study or what they want to do in their future. Because you don't want to cut yourself off from potential students and Just because we have this beautiful thing called the internet doesn't mean they're getting all of the information they're looking for. You have to have the right terminology in order for that to show. So it's only two. I don't have three, but I'm sure Caitlin and Alex have more to fill in.
Those are two very good ones.
Yeah, I have a couple. I think both of mine I think I've said, but I think are the two biggest things if anyone could take away from the UX perspective. The first one is definitely don't make assumptions, rely on data. Anytime you're making those assumptions of, well, we understand our students, we understand what they need. If you don't have data to back that up, you don't actually know that that's true. And those needs, like I was saying before, they change so often, either technology-wise or just messaging-wise or interpersonally. There's so many things that are changing, especially with the more traditional audience every single year. So it's really important to make sure you're always getting data on what those students need, tracking what's working, what's not, in terms of convincing them to reach out and work with and apply to the school. Just making sure that you're always going back to data at the end of the day. I'm a data junkie, so I'm a little bit biased, but I honestly do think that it is the best way to make sure that you're not wasting your time on things that just aren't successful. That's probably my biggest one. My other one would be just, again, making sure that you're tracking everything that you're doing, making sure that you're tracking things through, that you know what the goal is every time you get started with something, and making sure that you are kind of following through and tracking that and making sure that you know what it is that you want to get out of everything that you're working on. Probably my two biggest ones that I'd recommend.
Also, two very good ones. Alex, I'll let you wrap it up with your top couple of
Sure. So the first one would be going back to that multi-channel strategy, making sure that you really have that locked in as far as how you're going to use the various channels and which ones make sense for you and your institution and your goals. It, like Dana mentioned, it can be very easy to just kind of get spun up in a new channel without actually taking a moment to think about how we're going to use it and how we're going to support it with content going forward. So take a moment, step back, and really assess all those channels and make sure that you're using them strategically, or if there are other ones you'd like to explore, it's a good opportunity to kind of point those out and start from scratch there. I'd also say recognizing that the university homepage is a very important front door to the institution, that it is for a recruitment purpose is still a big visiting point where a lot of people are going to end up and learn about your institution for the first time. And so that page, really, I would recommend, there's a lot of focus still kind of floating around that if you look at a lot of university homepages, there's still some that are focused on serving both the prospective student audience and internal audiences and trying to do both on the same page. It's very difficult to do without creating a very bloated, difficult to navigate site. You're going to end up relying on those navigation menus that try and sort people by audience and try and recommend people different resources by audience, when it'd be much easier to just make your homepage recruitment focused and focused all of your content on that, and then filter people through to the other various resources if they get that far into the site. So I would really recommend, because it is still, data supports that it is still a very important place where people go to learn about your institution, in addition to your social media accounts, but the homepage really matters. The last thing I would say is more institutional, especially for larger institutions. I would strongly recommend, if you don't have one already, start the process of creating a central authority on web strategy on campus. Somebody who is going to own the question of overall web strategy, not just developing websites on the technical side, but also somebody who knows the broad suite of digital marketing that can help kind of shepherd your institution forward if the resources exist for it. I would strongly advocate, because it will save you resources in the long run. It will just somebody to help guide campus and provide that sort of guidance for people who are spinning up websites. A lot of people who end up working on college websites have never touched website management in their life. It's a department administrator or receptionist who's been asked to manage this web page, having never done web management before. And so somebody who can provide guidance to them and help them make a better website will help your whole web ecosystem come up and get better in quality if they have that support behind them. So creating that sort of central body that can help spread that sort of knowledge, I think, is really important. It takes a lot of investment up front, but it saves in the long run, and it will make better websites. And that's where you need to be performing at this moment and when it comes to recruitment.
All right, that's a mic drop moment.
Yes.
I love it. Well, Alex, Dana, Caitlin, thank you all so much for joining me and sharing really great, awesome insights and advice to help higher ed marketers achieve their enrollment and growth goals. And thank you to everyone in our audience for tuning in. Keep an eye out for our next Around the Campfire episode, which will be coming in the next couple of weeks. And check out previous episodes on our YouTube channel and on our website, usdigital.com/around the campfire. We look forward to seeing you back around the campfire with us again very soon. Thanks for joining us.